As of November 6, 2024, AP News has called the presidential election and Donald Trump has been declared the president-elect. With this result, there are many thoughts and opinions. So let's head over to CPP reporter Billy Huang as he gauges the results and the thoughts and opinions of students on campus.
What's up, Broncos? I'm CPP reporter Billy Huang. Now that the elections are finally over and Donald Trump has once again reclaimed the White House for his second term of presidency, let's go see what the students have to say about that.
It was definitely a shock to me when I found out that Donald Trump won the election, because I personally was expecting Harris because of a lot of controversy behind Trump and all of his, him being a convicted felon. So I definitely found it surprising to me that he would take the election. But like people have been saying, he did have a very strong campaign effort, which I think did give him an edge in the election.
I'm actually more surprised he was able to run again because of, with all his crimes or anything. Because there is documented proof of what he did, like the courts and everything. It was literally on the news, way before the election. So I'm honestly more surprised at that.
It was very interesting seeing, because we're a blue swing state. It was very interesting seeing, my social media feed, just everyone's opinions about it. Overall, I'm not really politically orientated, but if that's what everyone thought was the best option, I can't, constitute what I think is right. There are a lot of things I disagree with both, candidates, but at the end of the day, the Electoral College made their decision.
I believe that it speaks to what the people wanted and what they got. And I believe it was a fair election and it got everything what people was asking for.
Do you think he's going to do anything differently from his first term?
Other than from the first term, I believe so. This time he now has the majority of the House, the Senate, the judges, and the presidency, so it'll probably be all swing to his favor.
I feel like that this is going to be definitely a lot different this time because, I feel like during the times where he wasn't in office, he had time to at least think about what he wants to do. Yes, there might be some things that not everyone's going to agree with. There's a few things that I don't agree with, but, he had time to think about it. He had time to, to see okay, now I have a solid team with me. We're going to make some changes. We're going to do it differently this time. So, I think there'll definitely be a lot more changes because, it's his second run around. So.
Well, I heard that he said that before he gets into office, that he would want the war in Israel to be ended. And that's one thing I hope he does deal with, and that the war in Israel will be ended.
All right, awesome, man. How about you?
I think I would second that. I would like him to make sure that's a priority and end the indiscriminate killing that's happening to Palestinians and make sure that they get their rights fulfilled. And that's what we can do. The U.S. can end this war today if they wanted to. And so, he's in office, so I think it's incumbent upon him to do that, and we will keep on raising our voices to make sure that he hears us.
Thank you, Billy. I'm here with the chair of the Political Science Department, Dr. Guerrero, to talk about what happened this election cycle and what we can expect next. So my first question to you is about swing states. As we know, swing states are really the ones to watch throughout the entire election. Why do you think so many swing states went to Donald Trump, and why has the amount of swing states kind of diminished over time?
Yeah, so there's a couple of good questions in there. I think the first one about why the swing states were so close, it's really a matter of turnout. And presidential elections, who wins and who loses depends on who turns out to vote. So turnout, especially in the last three presidential elections, has looked pretty remarkably different. 2020, we saw an outpouring of voters come out, and that was in the wake of COVID. But 2024, it seems turnout has been depressed a bit, and that will contribute to whether the swing states are competitive or not. There's less people voting, and I think at least initially, some of the conversation is that the election had been a foregone conclusion for a lot of voters, that people were resigned to vote for Donald Trump and weren't really considering Kamala Harris. But more broadly, I think there's an overall trend of polarization in the United States.
I want to touch on something you said, which was that there was less voter turnout this election than the last one. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know. It seemed, this might be part of the media atmosphere, but it seemed like there was a lot of attention on enthusiasm. And it might be characteristic of the fact that for the Democratic Party, that there was such an unusual event happening with Joe Biden stepping down after the first presidential debate. That seemed to focus a lot of attention on Kamala Harris, which was largely positive. And typically in a campaign, we have more than 3 months with the candidate. So there wasn't as much time to make missteps. But that shortened amount of time, paired with the fact that it was such an unusual event, it carried a lot of unproportional attention, which I think a lot of people mistook for enthusiasm or engagement. And that didn't end up bearing out, obviously.
A lot of media outlets talk about the first 100 days, and I just want to know, what can we expect in the first 100 days of a second Trump presidency, and why are the first 100 days so important?
Yeah, so in Trump's first 100 days, I expected it to go a lot differently than it did the first time. In a lot of ways, Trump was inexperienced. He didn't have any, direct Washington, D.C. Insider knowledge, but he's gone through it once. So he'll be quicker. He'll know the tricks in terms of appointments. But the other thing to consider is that this time he also has control of Congress, which wasn't true the first time. So part of the reason why 100 days is referred to often and seen as sort of like a benchmark for any presidential administration is that it's the honeymoon period. It's the time when you have the most ability to make significant movements. And a lot of that is about attention. A lot of that is, the public is still sort of focused on this new administration. But the other component of that is that you're still in relatively good shape with Congress because you haven't really started working together yet. Not at least in a significant way on policy or legislation, which often ends up in, disagreement. So in the first 100 days, I wouldn't be surprised to see some significant steps, particularly on things like immigration, which is like a major cornerstone of Trump's, rallies.
What advice do you have to Cal Poly Pomona students who are feeling disheartened about the results, and how can they get involved in their communities to impact change?
I think organizing in your community can take a lot of different kinds of forms. Volunteering, helping officially with organizations is important. A lot of organizations live and die by volunteers. Time is in a lot of ways more important than money, but that is really responsible for forming the bonds and connections that can support and see a community through especially tough times. I struggle sometimes with how much we recommend to students to participate in structures and systems that don't really benefit them, that haven't benefited them, that aren't designed for them, frankly. We're trying to fit into a system that wasn't even built for people like me, to be honest. So I didn't listen to her speech, but I read some parts of it. And, I struggle with like, how much do we continue to support, these parties? And I think these are good questions, but these are good questions to be addressed amongst the electorate, people who are aspiring to change things. And I don't know what the answer is, specifically if these systems are not working for us. But we need to develop some new ways of doing things because clearly things aren't working. So it's a good question, but it's a hard question. And I think part of that will kind of be born on the ground in terms of what we do. But I don't think the answer is to become more disillusioned and more disengaged. And if you're turning away from some of the most meaningful things that can really help people, help yourself, I think that's hard in terms of what our lives will be, specifically for young people. It's really hard to start a family. It's really hard to buy a home now, particularly in California. So if you're turning away, it's like, what are you turning away to? So I really don't think there's a choice but to participate, because otherwise it's like, what are we doing?
Thank you for your time today. We really appreciate it. The Poly Post will continue to cover Donald Trump's second presidency as more news becomes available. This has been Victoria Mejicanos with the Poly Post.